In this video, I'm going to cover the basic usage of Fooocus for stable diffusion. We'll cover more advanced topics in later videos. So at this point, we're going to assume that you've already downloaded and installed Fooocus. If you have not, you can follow the instructions in the video I created for that first. And at this point, you should have the folder for Fooocus extracted. And in that folder, you'll have 3 bat files. Those 3 files will determine what settings are preloaded and what models are preloaded when you launch it. Your run BAT file is for launching the standard Fooocus application, which is ideal for general image generation using different models. Your anime one is obviously better tuned for anime, and the realistic one is better tuned and optimized for recreating realistic imagery. For this video, I'm just going to run the standard one. So we'll double click on that, and when you first launch it, if you haven't launched it yet, it will download any models or anything else. It'll do updates. And once that's finished, it'll launch the Fooocus application in your browser window, which should look like this. So before I go too far with showing you how to use Fooocus, I do want to show a couple things, file locations where things are saved. So in your Fooocus folder where the BAT files were that you first extracted, there is another folder called Fooocus. That's where the application is. In there, you'll find multiple folders. The couple of the ones you want to be aware of is the models and the outputs folder. So the outputs folder I'll cover first. That's where your images that you generate will be placed by default. There'll be an actual day. Each day will have its own folder in here. The other folder to be aware of is your models folder. Inside here, if you want to download any separate models or checkpoints, you would put them into your checkpoint folder where it says put checkpoints here. As you can see, we already have a couple that were downloaded. Any LoRa's would be put in here. And these are pretty much all the folders. If you had to put anything in any folders, these would be the ones you want to be aware of. Now let's move on to how to use Fooocus itself. Now when it comes to Fooocus, they concentrate more on the prompts, make it easier, so you don't have to tweak a lot of the settings that you do with some of the other ones. You do have that ability in the advanced features and in debug mode, but we're not going to cover most of that sort of stuff. I will show some of the basics. The key thing to remember is anything you put at the beginning of the prompt is going to usually have more priority than anything at the end of the prompt. So your most important things are going to be to put at the beginning. There is also prompt weights and things like that, which I'll show in a moment. So you're going to ask the AI for what you want. So we're going to put a woman sitting by the river in a red dress. So a woman is sitting by the river in a red dress. We'll go ahead and generate. So we'll click on generate. Now at this point, if we didn't like how the image is coming out, we can just hit skip. It'll go on to the next image. And if you want, you can just stop it. So as we can see here, we're getting a woman sitting by the river in a red dress. Now do keep in mind that prompts aren't always going to get everything correct. Sometimes it'll ignore things, and sometimes it will do things you're not expecting. And there we go. We have our 2 images. Now, that's just a basic prompt. We could add a lot more details if we want to. I could put in white water for some rapids in the background and some large boulders. So we'll see how that changes things. And as we can see, it's already adding more large boulders into the background, and you can see the rapids from the white water. Now, when it comes to writing prompts, if there's certain things that you want to have more weight applied to or less weight applied to with the AI, and what that means is you want to either stress that more or less, you can actually, let's say for this one, we want to have more white water. So we could put parentheses around that, and then after it, it'll be a colon, and then let's go with 1.5. Now, if I were to put 0.5, I would be telling it I want it to not put as much weight on that. By putting 1.5, I'm asking it to add more weight to that. 1.1 would be your a little bit more, 1.2 would be even more than that, 1.3, and so on. When you get to a certain point, you're going to start having weird effects. I usually don't go much more than 1.6 or 7, but you can always try these things out and see what the results are. So for this one, I'm going to go with 1.5, and we're going to see if it adds even more white water to the background from that. One thing to keep in mind when it comes to weights is it's telling the AI to give more emphasis to that. Some things will be impacted more than others. A lot of it will come down to trial and error. Now, I did earlier do some testing, and as you can see here, these were all done with the same seed, which that means is each image has a seed that it starts with and generates with. I'll explain how to change that after. But just for demonstration purposes, it will, if you have the same seed, all the same settings and the same prompt, it should theoretically create the same image. On these, the only thing I changed was the actual weight of the nose. And as you can see, from going from big nose 1.5, and then big nose 1.9, it increased the size of the nose. Those are where you're going to see the bigger differences. Certain other things you may not notice as much, the difference between the different weights, but that's a perfect example of how you'll see, and this will work for big feet, big hands, big anything. It'll increase the size of things. Also, let's say you don't want as big of a nose, you could put big nose : 0.5. So it'll still be a big nose, but not quite as big, but it won't be a small nose. Okay, so now that's good enough now for the prompts to get you started. Now we'll go on to the advanced section. There's a bunch to cover in here, so we'll try to cover everything, at least the basics of it. Later videos, I'll go into more detail. Once you've checked off the advanced tab, you'll notice on the right-hand side, you're going to have 4 sections. So we'll go cover the settings section first. Now at the top, you have performance, where speed, quality, or extreme speed. This determines how many steps are used to create the image. The more steps, usually the better the image to a certain extent. The speed setting is 30 steps, quality setting 60 steps, extreme speed 8 steps. Extreme speed, kind of useful for testing and getting ideas, especially if you have a slower system and you don't want to wait. Quality is for the final product. Speed, it all depends on what you're generating. Some images don't need to have the full quality setting. Some trial and error in there. You'll figure out which you prefer depending on what you're trying to do. Then the next section, you have aspect ratios. This is basically the image size. These are all presets. They're all safe to use. Whereas if you manually enter in with some of the other ones, you can get some weird results. So this way they kind of keep everything so you won't have some of those weird results. The next section you have after the aspect ratio is how many images to generate when you click the generate button. These are good. I usually use 1 or 2 images when I'm just testing out ideas. Once I get a general idea and I can see that it's giving me what I'm looking for, then I'll increase that to a larger number. That way I can set it, hit generate, walk away, come back when they're all done, and then look through the images. Down here you have your negative prompt. Now, the negative prompt in Fooocus or any of these is the idea is things that you don't want, you put in there. Now, that's not going to guarantee you won't get them. It will help the AI assist it to nudge it into the direction that you don't want those things. Don't fill it up too much with stuff. I feel a lot of people use a lot of different things in there, and it really isn't that useful. And you end up start getting real weird results, and it's hard to narrow down when you don't get the results that you want. So I usually limit that to, maybe a couple lines depending. For basic stuff, I don't usually put anything in there. Now, on the next section, after the negative prompt, you'll notice there's a checkbox that says random. This actually has to do with the seed that's used to create the image. Every image starts off with a seed. Now, by default, usually you're going to use random in most cases, but when you're testing things or if you get an image that's pretty close to what you want, but you want to adjust the prompt to see if you can change it slightly, that's when you may want to uncheck that and put a specific seed in here. Now, to give you an example, let's say I wanted to use one of these images, and I'm like, well, I want to regenerate that exact same image. Well, as mentioned before, if we go into our, open up our log, we're going to notice that these two images are here. Now, one thing you will notice is the seed. So right here we have the seed. This gives you the seed number that was used to create it. And this one is for, now you'll notice these two are sequential. So once it creates the random seed, any other images generated after that will just be the next number in that sequence. So let's say with the first one, we want to reuse that. So now there's multiple ways you can do this. One is to just copy that exact seed, which is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to copy the settings. Now, if I wanted to copy everything, I could click on copy to clipboard, and then you can paste it into the prompt. It'll allow you to pull in the settings and everything. I'll cover that in a different video. But we have that seed. Let's that is actually the same seed, so it's already in there. But now we're going to generate the same one, but I'm going to make it a blue dress. Now what it will do is create two more images, because I have it set to 2 images. And it's going to start off with the same seed. So both of these images are going to be using the same seeds as the previous 2 images that I used. The only thing I changed in this was to make it a blue dress instead of a red dress. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to come out exactly the same, but with a different dress color. But it will usually come out pretty similar. Okay, so we have our 2 images here. And let's pull up the actual previous images so I can get a rough idea of the difference. As you can see, they're very similar images. That's because we use the same seed. We just changed the dress type. Now, like I said, it doesn't necessarily mean it's just going to change the color of the dress. It will change the actual image, but it will be pretty close to the original one, and it will be the same seed, so you can test which the prompts do differently. So that's how the seeds work. Like I said, most times you're going to be using random, but when you're trying to get something specifically what you're looking for or testing things, that's when it's nice to uncheck that, put a specific one in there, and you can keep regenerating, trying a different prompt to see what the results you get. Okay, next up is the Style tab. I'm not going to go into these extreme detail. As you can see, there's an awful lot of styles. You can search. So if you're looking for a specific thing, you can find those. Now, the way these work is they're basically just wrappers for your prompt. So when you enter this prompt, it actually will wrap that with other things in the prompt. You can actually see, let's open up one of these just to show you what it looks like. So as you can see here, for the SAI 3D model, this will be your prompt, will be put in here, and then everything else will be added to it. And that's basically how all these different styles work. So you don't have to necessarily type all these in yourself into the prompt. You can use the presets to go from there. Give you an idea of what the styles can do. So this one here, I've already put in a prompt. I've already generated my image of the standard. It's just a painting. And now I'm going to actually look into, I'm going to apply a couple of these styles. Let's go with surreal painting and see what, oh wait, actually, let's do a dripping paint splatter art as well. So we're going to apply these 2 styles to the same, and it's got the same seed. So we're going to be using the same seed as we used before. And let's go ahead and generate a new image and see how that affects the original prompt that we had. Okay, so that gives you an idea. Let's go look at the original one. And then once we applied the styles, as you can see, much different results. Now, on to the next tab will be our model tab. Now, this is where you will load in, I had mentioned previously about downloading checkpoints, lures, putting them in folders. This is actually where you're going to load those. Your base default model, the generic model that Fooocus uses, is the Juggernaut XL one. There is no refiner used with that one. Now, if you're using standard SDXL, you would have the base and the refiner, and then you would choose the other one in here. Well, I'll just do this for an example. And then you would choose when it would switch over to the refiner. That's how it would work if you're using a checkpoint that needs the refiner. A lot of these do not need the refiner, so we're not going to be running anything in there. Now, by default, it's going to load, but the presets is certain LoRa, this LoRa. Also, if you go with the realistic, it'll preload another LoRa as well. I usually leave the weight on those, the default weight. The LoRa files, think of them as specific. They're not full checkpoints. There's something. I'll actually show you an example here. I actually have one of my goat. So let's actually do it without. So Tigo a goat in a boat. So it has no idea what Tigo is. That's my goat's name. So we're going to go ahead and run that. So as you can see, it created a goat. Problem is, it's not my goat. That's my goat right here. As we can see, it looks nothing like him because it doesn't know what he is. So now I'm going to actually load up the LoRa, which I have trained on my goat, and I'm going to run the same prompt. Now, all LoRa's usually have some sort of, you have to know what's going to trigger it. So in mine, Tigo is the token that I've used. So let's generate and see what happens. Okay, and there we go. Much closer to the actual goat. So there are many sites that you can go to actually download a lot of these. This is one of the more popular sites that you'll find out there. And you could specifically look up, like in here, we're going to look for models. And this will tell you if they're checkpoints. These are all your base models. Checkpoints are your base models. Then you have LoRa's and everything else. And as you can see, this, for example, would be in the trigger words here. As you can see, these are the trigger words. So that's what you would use if you had to download this LoRa and use it. In order to get what you want, you're going to use that trigger word. So that's the concept behind what's happening here. And for the last tab we have, I'm not going to actually run anything. I'll show you a few examples to give you an idea. The guidance scale in Fooocus is not the same as the guidance scale on other things, so just keep that in mind. As it says here, higher value means style is cleaner, vivider, and more artistic. So I'm going to give you an idea of what the results of that show. I have two images that I created. So this was the first image with just the standard guidance. And then here's the same image, same seed and everything, which a much, much higher guidance. As you can see, there's big difference in that. So play with that to decide, to get an idea of what you're looking for. But you can see here the same, here's another image. And that's with a much higher guidance scale for more artistic imagery. And these were much lower. And in the same regard, you have the image sharpness. And that's pretty much exactly what you would expect for the most part. So this was with the lower sharpness. This is a little bit higher. As you can see, let's and then that's the highest sharpness. So that gives you an idea of what those settings will do. You can play around with them to find out more. Now here you have the document. If you click on that, it's going to bring you to a much more advanced. It'll explain a lot and go into a lot more detail on these as well if you have any questions. And then, of course, you have the developer debug mode, which I am not going to jump into at this point. So that's pretty much how you use Fooocus. Hopefully that gets you going with your AI image generation. The biggest thing you're going to find is just play around with things. Experiment. Experiment, experiment, experiment. This is the biggest thing I can tell people, especially when it comes to the prompts, the styles, and everything else. I will be making some more videos that dive deeper into each of these subjects. There's a lot to everything, but this should get you started. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Any suggestions on what you're looking for, leave in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.